Hello everyone, this is part finale of What If Naruto Rescued Hinata, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. The flattened tree stump in the center of the Nimari village was known as the plaza. Though stump wasn't the most accurate word for it. It had once been a high-standing, ancient tree. Years ago, back in the day of Morigakure village, it was sea down. But not at the bottom, as most trees were. Instead, the sea was made nearly 10 feet from ground level. This was done because the tree was an anomaly. Though most of the flora of the woods had small tethers to the land's ley line network, the tree was heavily steeped in the lines. This was discovered by the sea that hoped to summon forth the Mori no Megami and bring her to this world. They realized immediately that this place was ideal for the goal. The summoning required a large collection of the lines in one place to act as a focusing point for the goddess life force. The mass within the tree was perfect. Cutting it was a precise process, for they had to create a flat space at the largest gathering of ley lines without completely destroying it in the process of see down the tree. They succeeded, and the plaza was created. The place where Hyuga Hinata, where Kashyuinga would become the Nimari's goddess made flesh. She stood in the center of the plaza. She wore no longer the vest and short pants that the youngsters of the village favored. She now was clad in a simple white, sleeveless, one-piece tunic that ended in a knee-length skirt. It was belted at the waist with a leather strap. On her head was a tiara, made of simple iron, in itself a rarity among the Nimari. The Kish had a more ornate set of clothing ready for this ceremony. Something better befitting the goddess they would be bringing into the world. However, practicality demanded things be kept simple. There was no guarantee that Kashyuinga would not be required to fight. In the tunic, she was better set to defend herself than the longer dress they'd had ready. Scattered throughout the forest were men and women. Those with the strongest life's flames. They remained hidden for the time being. The Kish didn't doubt for a moment that the shinobi might seek to disrupt the R by interfering with this point. As such, the channelers would remain hidden until a signal from the plaza was sent up letting them know their time had come. They would emerge only then, and only long enough to perform their task, to focus as much of their flame as possible into the ley lines. Enough so that, when it all gathered at the plaza, it would create a beacon that the goddess could sense even from her otherworldly plane. The channeling process would take a minute or two, after which the people performing the duties would use the remainder of their strength to go back into hiding. While this occurred, decoys would be used to lure out any shinobi who might try to attack. They would be among the strongest Nimari warriors, the goal to be to stall and, if possible, kill any enemies that attempted attack. They were placed fairly close to the real channelers, so they could respond quickly should an attack on the correct people occur. Stationed along the village were warriors of the tribe. But they were different from most that the shinobi had seen thus far. Until this point, to the outside had been made using the younger and greener warriors, as a means of giving them valuable experience. Those guarding the village now, however, were among the best and strongest. Some at, or nearly at, the level of Da Iriga. Many below that power, but still beyond the youngest of the fighters. Those younger ones were currently leading the non-combatants, elderly, children, and the purified, out of the village. Into an area intended to keep them safe should things go awry. Should the ceremony fail, or should the shinobi actually succeed in stopping them, they would be able to create anew the people of the forest. The Kish, who currently sat on the plaza with Kashyuinga chanting and signing to himself in preparation, had planned for as many eventualities as he could. He knew, thanks to Kashyuinga, that there were now more among their enemies. At least one of whom was also of the blessed line. According to what he knew from the girl's memories, those of her former people often traveled in groups of 4. So he knew to expect at least 3 others along with the 5 he knew of. Kashyuinga stood silently in the center. Her heart beating hard in her chest. She knew that the moment she'd been brought here for was fast approaching. She was nervous, self-doubt gnawed at her. She tried to push it away, but she was unable to focus on anything except for her own failures since the shinobi's arrival. Her faltering had allowed their escape twice now. She had defeated them in battle, but had been unable to land the final blows. Worst yet, her memories of before had become stronger as she thought more of them. Memories she had been fighting to bury from her first day as she of the ghostly eyes. She spoke of it to nobody, but she truly feared failing everybody yet again. She felt a hand on her shoulder. She looked up behind her to see the compassionate face of Da Iriaga. His injuries from his battle with Yuhi Kurenai had almost entirely healed. He would be fit for battle should she and her subordinates try again. Do not fret, he told her, reading her emotions in a way she couldn't recall anybody else ever doing. Concentrate on your task. We will handle everything else. Cashew nodded. The fact that Da Iriaga still held faith in her lifted much of the load off her mind. I will not fail, she thought, chanting it to herself as a mantra, I will not fail. Naruto and Kiba shared the last watch before the group was to set out into the Nimari village. Kurenai had told them it was because, this close to the time, it was best to have two sets of eyes instead of one. Though they both suspected it was because she didn't trust them not to fall asleep on such boring detail. But the two of them bickered through most of their watch, keeping both ninja alert. They had wondered to each other what Kurenai, who had the watch before theirs, had been doing when they arrived. Their only clue was what seemed to be leaves stuck in some nearby trees, almost as if thrown. They also tried to think of ways to get through to Hinata, when they finally confronted her. The fact is, telling her is pointless. Kiba said. Yeah, when I kept pushing, she became more eager to kill me, not less. Naruto commented. So we can't tell her. Kiba said. But we can show her. Naruto said, suddenly hit by inspiration. Kiba, he asked, Kurenai-sensei told me that Hinata kinda looked up to me. Is that true? She told you, huh? Kiba said, feeling a little disappointed in his master. Well, kinda, is an understatement. You know how Hinata is. Shy. Doesn't believe in herself much. Compare that to you, who would rather be? Naruto thought he understood well enough. You're her ideal. Yo wait, Kiba said, suddenly getting an idea himself, when you said show. Naruto nodded with a sly grin on his face. They were on the same wavelength. If you're thinking what I think you are, it's crazy. Kiba told him. But it might work, said a voice behind them. The two genin jumped up and saw Shino standing behind them. Kurenai-sensei asked me to get you, so I couldn't help but overhear, he explained. Hinata's hypnosis seems based in giving her that which she has idealized. You're thinking of somehow destroying that idea and making her realize she's living a false dream. The two nodded. Good. Let Sensei and the Hyuga know what you're thinking while we move. It's time. Naruto asked. It is. Then let's go. Kiba said, eager for battle. The 8 Konoha nin made their way through the village. The Hyuga with their Byakugan kept them alert to any dangers that might stop them or slow them down. Infiltration was more difficult this time around. Now there were guards stationed at strategic points throughout the village. Kurenai could tell immediately that these were not the kids and rookies they'd fought, but fighters closer to the caliber of the man she had fought the day before. She instructed everyone to be on the guard as they leapt through the treetops. When they reached a point where evading guards was not an option, Shino handled matters by using some of his more venomous insects to incapacitate the enemies before them. However, some wore the Nimari's powerful insect repellent, keeping Shino's bugs at bay. Kurenai, in these cases, would perform a genjutsu, creating a distraction that would allow one of the Hyuga to get close enough to silence their enemy. Though they knew they were on the right path, Kiba and Akamaru stayed on point, kept their noses alert. They were tracking Hinata's scent, which would undoubtedly lead them to the stump or close to it. Hyuga Kodomaru stayed close to Kiba, his Byakugan on full alert to protect the boy and dog from any sudden danger Kiba or Akamaru might be too focused to miss. On her orders, Naruto remained close to Kurenai. He tried to keep himself aware of his surroundings, but he kept finding himself distracted. He and Kiba had informed her of Naruto's plan and, though risky, approved it. If, or rather, when a fight started, Kurenai would make sure Naruto reached his place while the other 6 would create as big a ruckus as possible to lure as many enemies as possible to them. Kurenai worried now, as that was especially dangerous, considering the discovery of their enemy's new formidability. The hope, however, was that the Konoha nin could reach the destination without a battle, and thus set up the inevitable battle on their terms. giving them what advantage they could. To everyone's surprise and relief, luck seemed to be working in their favor. They reached a tree from which they could all see the tree stump clearly while remaining hidden. The presence of guards here was heavy, however, so the group had been forced to split up. Kiba, Shino, and Kodomaru stayed together. They three were all genin and would have better odds in battle if they stuck together. Kiba made a point of describing various team maneuvers he and Shino often used with Hinata, so that Kodomaru could, to some extent, fill in the gap she left during combat. Tomoko and Yuishi took off another way. Kurenai had been told by Raizen that the two were siblings, and worked very well together. Both of them, as well as Raizen, were of the Chunin rank, giving them better odds against the enemy than the genin with them did. Kurenai's worry was Raizen, who had insisted on going off alone. He assured her she would be fine. But a single Chunin, even a talented one, against a group of strong enemies would have a difficult battle ahead of him. She had allowed it, only on the insistence that 3 separate disturbances would help thin the enemy's ranks a bit, giving each group fewer opponents. That left Kurenai and Naruto. When the others began the distractions, Kurenai and Naruto would use any big gaps in the enemy ranks and make a run for the stump. Fortunately, the guard was actually very light near it. Kurenai theorized this was due to the heavy amount of chakra that was to be channeled in the area. It would make it dangerous to have all but those who had to be there nearby. They could serve as a distraction to those performing the ceremony, or inadvertently cause a problem that might disrupt things too greatly. She looked up to the sky. Despite the canopy of trees above them, Kurenai could see that dawn was approaching. They had left hours before, the pre-dawn gloom giving the large group enough darkness to move without being seen. When sunlight began to seep through the holes in the ceiling of branches and leaves above them, that would be when the others made their move. When their final attempt to salvage their lost ninja would come. The Kiji's chanting had begun to increase in speed. To Cashew Ingar it almost seemed as if the old man were being possessed by something. Though it could be just a matter of prudence. The time was fast approaching. Cashew knew that the channeling of the life's flame into the ley lines would begin as soon as dawn's light began peeking through the forest's cover above them. So far, there seemed to be no disturbance from the shinobi trying to disrupt the summoning. That calm didn't last long, however. No sooner than the channelers begin their work than a loud horn was heard over the sounds of the forest village. It was an alarm. The shinobi had indeed attacked. A fair distance east of the plaza, Aburame Shino, Inazuka Kiba, and Hyuga Kodomaru had made the appearance of accidentally being seen. Animori, believing them caught unaware, blew a horn for an alarm and immediately leapt at the 3 boys, only to take a well-aimed kunai, courtesy of Kiba, into the gut and fall. Others would come to the source of the sounds and a fight would start. North of the plaza, Hyuga's Tomoko and Yuishi set themselves up on what appeared to be a well-traveled route to intercept as many enemies from this direction as possible. Yuishi placed himself close to a bridge, in plain sight of any who would pass by. Tomoko laid in wait in the trees directly above. To the west, Hyuga Raizen was ready as well. Despite the lack of time, he had managed a few simple yet effective traps, including garroting wires and exploding seals that would catch unawares those unlucky enough to stumble into them. Close to himself, he placed incomplete or obvious traps. Things that would catch his foe's attention, distracting him enough for his attacks to take him out. South, most of the Nimori began heading towards the sounds of the alarm. Some had also noticed the noise of fighting on other directions, and headed there instead. This left a much more sparse, and easy to break through, group of enemies below Kurenai and Naruto. Kurenai closed her eyes and focused. She sensed only 2 chakras above them on the stump. One was Hinata's without a doubt. The other, she couldn't tell. It was strong, though. She thought that it was likely the one conducting the summoning. He or she would be too focused on that, hopefully, to interfere with Naruto. Those below, however, were another story. Naruto, she said, I'm going down there. You wait here. Do not move until you are positive that everyone is focused on me. We can't risk someone following you and getting in the way. No sooner did Naruto nod his understanding did Kurenai leap from their hiding place and right into the middle of the surprised Nimori. Naruto watched. As strong as the men and women below were, they weren't a match for a Jonin of Konohagakure. Many fell quickly due to their surprise and slow response to Kurenai's appearance. The rest put up a better fight, but Kurenai was still moving easily around them and fighting back. Their numbers, less than they had been just moments ago, not enough of an advantage over the kunoichi. Naruto watched and waited. After a few moments, it seemed all eyes were on Kurenai. Every enemy had their focus on her. It was his chance. Naruto took a deep breath to calm himself, and leapt from the tree trunk he had been clinging to. He stayed on higher, hoping to stay out of an enemy's line of vision and also giving him the height necessary to reach the stump where Hinata was easily. The thought of his objective in his mind, he leapt with as much speed and strength as he could muster. As soon as the horns trumpeted the arrival of intruders, Iriga began to scan the surroundings. He was well attuned to the sounds of the woods, and from his vantage point upon the plaza he could scan visually any area he needed to see quickly. When he realized that sounds of fighting seemed to be coming in all but one general direction, he looked down and saw the shinobi woman, whom Kashyuinga had told him was named Yuhi Kurenai, fighting a much smaller squad of warriors than he remembered leaving there. Doubtless they were called away by the other fights, leaving this path open. With that done, Kurenai seemed intent on keeping as much focus on her as possible. If that is your wish, Yuhi Kurenai, he thought, then I shall indulge you. After his first fight with the woman, the warrior's pride within him ached for a rematch. He looked to Kashyuinga, who stood in silence on the center of the plaza. Sensing his gaze, she turned away from the Kish to look at him. He gave her a reassuring smile before he leapt from the plaza to enter the battle. As he descended, he caught sight of something orange. The shinobi boy that he knew occupied many of Kashyu's thoughts was above him, making his way to the plaza. He momentarily wondered whether or not he should abort his mission and chase the boy. However, he knew that Kashyu had battled him successfully already, she should be able to handle him now. So he continued his descent, the fall affecting him little. He landed just as Yuhi had begun to finish incapacitating the last of the Nimari she fought. Kashyuinga listened as the Kij's chanting began to slow again. He was now making hand signs at a rapid pace even Kashyu's eyes had difficulty keeping up with. In a matter of minutes, the life's flame channeled into the ley lines would begin to flow to the plaza. At that time, it would create a beacon that the goddess, in her otherworldly plane, would be able to sense and approach. However, the beacon's exact location would begin to shift in various directions until the final moments. Kashyu tried to push her apprehensions aside. She would be able to keep up with the shifting and remain positioned correctly. So long as she wasn't distracted. Hinata. Kurenai had managed to defeat the remainder of the sparse forces guarding Naruto's approach when he had appeared. Kurenai recognized him immediately as the man she had fought the previous day. He wore a brown cloth tunic. His body was decorated in war paints. The patterns and colors allowed him to blend in with his surroundings quite well. That fact actually puzzled Kurenai, as he could have easily hidden himself away and caught her by surprise. Instead, he had made no secret of his approach. She soon got a very surprising answer to her question. Yuhi Kurenai, the man said, pointing right at her. He then jerked a thumb and pointed at himself with it. Iriga. Kurenai was stunned, to say the least. If she understood his intent correctly, he had just introduced himself. She also understood that he was challenging her to combat. Kurenai hesitated to accept. She knew her opponent's skill. If she got too caught up fighting him, Naruto and Hinata might be endangered. Her inner debate was answered for her, when the men held up a horn attached to a sash he wore around his waist. The implication was clear. If she didn't accept, he'd put pride aside and summon more fighters to aid him. Kurenai pulled a kunai dagger from her belt's pouch. The two warriors charged and began their rematch. Two siblings, both Chunin of Konohagakure, were having a fairly easy time with their battles. Hyuga Ueshi had not moved more than 3 steps from the point where the Nimari had first seen him. Ueshi was highly adept at fighting within a limited amount of space. He could fight off a dozen opponents without a great deal of movement. And that was exactly what he did now. The battle was hard won, but won it was. Hyuga Risen, another Chunin, had a more difficult time. Though he was only one man, he had great intelligence on his side. His IQ could rival that of another Chunin of Konoha, Nara Shikamaru. However, unlike the young and still inexperienced boy, Risen had a mind sharpened by many years of experience as a shinobi. As anticipated, Those Nimari who didn't fall into the serious traps took their time around the fake or incomplete ones, leaving them open for attack. Soon, though, the enemy caught on to the plan. They began forgetting the obvious traps and keeping an eye out for hidden ones. Ryzen kept himself hidden within the shadows of the forest's leaves and branches. His Byakugan provided him the range of vision enough that allowed him to hide without having to worry that he himself couldn't see what was occurring around him. From his hiding place, he could see clearly the Nimari searching for him. He timed attacks and movement carefully, to prevent their pinpointing his position. When it seemed he was in danger of being seen, he would quickly and silently move somewhere else. No simple task, as these were warriors who knew the forests and what to listen for. But he managed it. Those that remained to challenge him didn't move. They wanted to find this intruder and deal with him. As his main goal was to keep them away from everyone else, that suited Ryzen just fine. Hinata. Cashyu's head jerked in shock at the sound of the voice. It was him, the blonde shinobi. She could feel her cheeks warm with blush at the mere sight. Not here. Not now. The Kij, still signing and chanting, looked to Kashyu and gave a barely noticeable nod of his head. He was giving her instruction to deal with the intruder. She was happy to do so. She was through putting up with him. It was time to end this. I have had enough of you, she told him. I've had enough of everything, really, he shot back. I'm going to make you finally realize what's going on here. You can't defeat me. You lost to me with the aid of your friend and his pup. Hey, I'll be just fine, now that they aren't holding me back, he said, with a mix of arrogance and defiance. Kashyu felt a throb in the back of her head, but she set it aside. You don't plan on trying to tell me I'm this Hinata person again, do you? Kashyu asked, her hands suddenly clenching into fists. No, I don't, Naruto said. I've finally realized that trying to tell you is pointless. With that, Naruto placed his hands together, his index and middle fingers lining upward. Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, he cried. Several Naruto appeared with clouds of smoke. Kashyu watched, unimpressed. She'd seen this technique already. But Naruto wasn't finished. Henge, he shouted. Another large cloud of smoke appeared. With her ghostly eyes, Kashyu could see the forms of the boy and his doubles within changing. She didn't know what they had become though, until the smoke cleared. Kashyu watched, her eyes wide and her mouth open in shock. As the smoke blew and thinned, Kashyu saw, not an army of blonde shinobi, but herself. She saw herself, dressed in familiar clothing. A heavy white jacket, a maroon bodysuit underneath, and a headband with a leaf insignia worn around the neck. The army of Uzumaki Narutos had transformed itself into an army of Hyuga Hinatas. Trying to tell you is pointless, said the leader of the band of Hinata, her voice carrying the confidence the real Hinata only dreamed of. That's why I have to show you who you really are. Kashyu was slow in regaining her senses. The army of doppelgangers before her was a total shock. She calmed herself when she thought of what his plan had to be. He intended to throw her off balance, to confuse her. That would not work. She would not let it. Let these doubles come, she exclaimed. I will topple them all. Come they did. Naruto charged his army at his enemy. He no longer had any intention of holding back against Hinata. It was all or nothing, now. He had to use everything he had at his disposal to succeed. And succeed he would. He had to. Kashyu met the troop of mirror images head on. They may have looked like her, but they fought in the style of Uzumaki Naruto. A style she knew from the previous encounter. A style she knew she could defeat. However, the numbers being pushed on her were potentially overwhelming. She had to figure out which of her enemies was truly the blonde or all was lost. Naruto was smarter than that, though. Just as he did against Hyuga Neji, he spread his chakra evenly among his dozen or so doubles. He knew Hinata would have a hard time finding the real Naruto among them all. Also, because she remembered Naruto's trick of keeping a double out of the fight as a decoy, she would be forced to treat each and every likeness of herself as the real enemy. That would cause Hinata to waste energy she could otherwise conserve by going only after her real foe. Through all this, the Kij watched, unable to end his chanting and signing to help the girl. She was on her own for this fight. Kashyu jumped and planted her hand on the head of one of the Hyuga Hinatas she fought. Using the transformed double as a vaulting horse, she leapt through the air, twisting and contorting though the mob. However, Kashyuinga also inadvertently placed herself right into the path of another double. She couldn't move in time to avoid the punch coming at her. When the combatants split, Naruto took a moment to think about his options. The cage bunshin seemed to be doing the job, beating her through numbers. Naruto hated the fact that he had to strike Hinata the way he did. He hated the idea of hitting girls in general. Girls he liked, such as Sakura or Hinata, were big no-nos in his book. For now, though, he choked down his own self-loathing for the greater good. He'd beg Hinata's forgiveness later, when they survived this. Naruto charged his doubles after Hinata once more. Again, Naruto held the upper hand. His army of Hyuga Hinata slowly overwhelming the real one. Hinata was able to hit the chakra points necessary to dispel several of the clones, but Naruto was more than able to create more in their place. Kashyuinga wasn't sure what to do about this situation. The boy was organizing his duplicates well enough that her close combat techniques were doing little to aid her. She had to find some way to take the fight back into her own hands. Something, anything. Hinata. Again. Kashyu's balance was momentarily thrown by the sudden voice in her head. A voice she recognized as the white-eyed man from her dreams. The one who left her crying as she woke. Again, Hinata, he said. Kashyu saw a girl, saw herself, stand again and assume a battle stance. Concentrate your chakra to all of the tenketsu in your body. Maintain your equilibrium, and then twirl your body. The girl in Kashyu's mind attempted to do so. Unfortunately, she overdid the amount of chakra in part of her body and was thrown off balance, falling on her rear in the process. Again, the man commanded. Kashyuinga instinctively tried shaking off the memory. That was, until she realized just what the memory had shown her. Her edge, her advantage, a technique her old self, the self of before, could not perform. One Kashyuinga knew she could manage. She managed once again to extricate herself from the mob of doubles challenging her. Uzumaki sent them after her once more, but she blocked their presence from her mind. She focused solely on her current goal. Her life's flame spread throughout her body at her command, gathering at the correct points. When she felt the proper amounts had built up, she unleashed her move. Kaiten. She screamed as the name came to her. Kashyuinga twirled her body in place as she expelled the flame in her body. A small tornado surrounded her for an instant just as her enemies were reaching her. They were caught up in the winds and sent flying. Many were blown clear off the edges of the plaza, puffs of smoke arising as their distance grew too far from that of their creator. Those few who remained, among whom Kashyu knew was the boy she fought, were sprawled around the flat trunk in varying states of eye. The battle was hers once more. Far below, at the base of the plaza, two other warriors fought another battle. Kurenai and Da Iriaga had proven to be nearly equal opponents. Kurenai had superior power and skill on her side. The older man she fought had plenty of past experience and a thorough knowledge of the battlefield terrain working in his favor. He was making frequent use of the technique Kurenai now understood, thanks to Hyuga Raisen, to be the Konoha no Shuriken no Jutsu. That did not surprise Kurenai. As she understood it, the technique was quite useful if you had good enough chakra control to perform it. Da Iriaga performed the signs Kurenai knew would create more of the leaf projectiles. As expected, they came at her with near blinding speed. Kurenai dodged them with ease, but just barely dodged an attack inexplicably coming from behind her. Looking around, Kurenai saw more of the leaves scattered by the technique forming into the doubles. Kurenai quickly counted about 4 of them along with the real Da Iriaga. Kurenai became concerned, thinking of the obvious combination of the Bunshin and Shuriken. She made a note to herself not to let her foes get too close. On the other hand, she thought, an idea forming. This was a good chance to go on the offensive and surprise her enemy. Rather than keep her distance, Kurenai charged one of her foe's doubles. Remembering her first encounter with the Nimari warrior, she brought her own hands up and performed the very same signs her opponent was in the midst of performing. However, Kurenai's formal training gave her an edge. She was much faster on her sign weaving than even Da Iriaga, who specialized in this particular maneuver. Kurenai had spent her entire watch the previous evening practicing the signs as best she remembered them. That practice had been rewarded when about half of the leaves began to glow and fly at her enemy. However, Due to Kurenai's inexperience with the jutsu, Da Iriga was able to claim the rest. Kurenai was prepared. Inspired by seeing the Kazetama no Jutsu at the start of their first battle, Kurenai performed a variation of the move she'd once learned. Fuyuten, Kei's no Tate no Jutsu. She thrust forward her right hand, focusing much of her chakra into it. The result was a rush of wind forcing out before her much like a barrier. The leaf shuriken proved very vulnerable to sudden rush of wind and stopped in midair and fell to the ground. As she performed the Kei's no Tate, her left hand reached into her shuriken pouch and pulled very real shuriken from it, hurling them towards the leaves she'd sent at her enemy. When Da Iriga made moves to dodge the leaves, he'd found himself the target of metal stars. Kurenai had timed her throw well, catching her enemy in the midst of dodging one attack, and unable to evade the second. He wound up with a star in his upper left arm and in the right side of his stomach. The man staggered. Kurenai knew she had just gotten her best chance to finish this. Naruto, still in the form of Hinata, picked himself up onto his feet. Naruto had never expected Hinata would use that spinning move Neji used. Then again, Naruto knew it was something only Hyuga could do. That meant he was making progress. Her memory was coming back, bit by bit. Naruto had figured this would work. When he and Kiba had spoken during their watch last night, they had talked about Kurenai's lecture on hypnosis. They remembered her saying that hypnosis was only effective when the person wanted to do what they were being hypnotized to do. They thought that meant that the more someone wanted it, the more susceptible they were. They knew that Hinata wanted to be strong, to be acknowledged. They knew that this genjutsu of the Nimurais was giving her what she wanted most. They had to break that spell to get Hinata back. In remembering her admiration for Naruto, the two had come up with this idea. To show Hinata the ideal self. The self she strived to be. Confident, strong, refusing to yield to any obstacle. In so doing, Hinata would, hopefully, realize that what she had wasn't what she really wanted after all, breaking through the illusion holding her. To accomplish that, Naruto took Hinata's form, intending to fight and defeat Kashyuinga, and bring back the real Hyuga Hinata. If the pain resulting in hitting a spinning wall of chakra was any indication, it was working. Though perhaps not as well as it should be. Hinata was clearly remembering something of her past. But she was still in the persona of Kashyuinga. Naruto was sure of this because she still had that irritating smirk on her face. That look that said she knew she would win, it was just a matter of how long it would take. Not to be outdone, however, Naruto gave Hinata that very same smirk in reply. Nice trick, Hinata. He called out in the girl's voice, making a point of stressing her name. Hinata's smirk faltered for a moment at the mention of her name. Naruto took a quick inventory of his bunshin. Many had been dispelled as a result of Hinata's last strike. However, he counted out about 6 or 7 remained. Naruto considered making more, but thought better of it. It would waste chakra better conserved for something down the line. He had the Kuchio's no Jutsu and the Rasengan. However, his summoning was still a bit unpredictable and the Rasengan too potentially lethal. While he was no longer holding back, he still didn't want to actually K Hinata. Besides, while Kage Bunshin helped Naruto in unsettling Hinata, using any techniques she had never seen before might hurt his chances of getting through to her. Using stuff she had seen already made her unsteady, reminded her of the past. Using unfamiliar moves threatened to make her refocus her attention on the present. Okay, so what can I use that she already knows about? Naruto wondered to himself. He had an idea, and he had just enough bunshin available to implement it. Unfortunately, Hinata moved before he did. Kashyuinga performed a technique she had studied in her brief time among the Nimuri. Though also known to the outside world, it was commonly known and used here as a means of traveling through the large trees. She squatted down, concentrating as much of life's. Naruto could only watch as Hinata leapt straight up. He wondered what she was trying to do. He became even more perplexed when Hinata began performing the kaiten when her jump reached its highest point. Naruto wondered what her plan was, as all she seemed to be doing was kicking up some heavy wind. Naruto realized what she was doing as she began to come down, several of wind-blown leaves following behind her. He had only heard of the leaf shuriken move from Kurenai. This was his first time seeing it in action. He knew her plan now, and he couldn't think of anything to stop it. She was using this technique as a means to hit all of her doppelgangers at once. He watched as Hinata performed the signs necessary for the move, making the dozens upon dozens of leaves she'd blown free hurtle straight down. All the Naruto Hinatas did their best to move and dodge, but the real Hinata had made a point of using as many leaves as possible spread out as much as possible. There was nowhere on that stump that was safe except for maybe near the old man who was chanting. That was out, as Naruto got the feeling he should keep away from that guy as much as possible. So he did the only thing he could, he took the hits. Naruto focused his chakra, once again calling on the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu to create doppelgangers of himself in Hinata's form. He created about 12 in all. He sent half of them to charge Hinata, reaching her just as she landed gracefully on the stump that was their battlefield. Hinata, as Naruto expected, didn't hesitate. Once again she spun her body like a top, calling on the Hakusho Kaiten to spin away the doubles fighting her. Naruto waited for his opportunity. Now, Naruto had his remaining doubles, who had moved around so as to surround Hinata, attack. 4 came at her, the one in front of Hinata struck first. Hinata, not fully recovered form using the Kaiten, had no way of defending herself. Naruto Renden, he cried. Dash. Kashyuinga couldn't tell if the pain she felt in her head was due to the attack from her enemy, or from the deluge of memories suddenly flooding it. As the boy in her form attacked, her mind filled with images of him, in his real shape, fighting with the other shinobi. The boy with the dog. She watched him get up, despite his enemy's ferocity. She heard his declaration that he would not give up. That he would become his land's greatest shinobi. She remembered the feeling of admiration that welled up in her during that battle as he tricked his enemy into attacking his own partner. A faith in the boy that didn't waver, even when his sole reason for winning was a fortunately timed bout of flatulence. She saw him finish off the ninja Inuzuka Kiba with the very move he was using on her that very moment. In the present, the final 2D strike sent Kashyu skidding along the plaza, bouncing and spinning until her momentum was lost. She lay there for a second, before using what she could of her strength to get onto her knees. As she did, more memories clutched at her mind. A boy, who resembled her. A battle she knew she couldn't win. A battle she continued to fight anyway. I don't quit, and I won't run. She had declared, I won't take back my words. That is my Nindo. Kashyu held her head, tears flowing from her eyes as the pain in her head grew worse. Damn you, she hissed between sobs. Naruto didn't respond. Damn you, Naruto tentatively approached the girl. He stopped when her head suddenly shot up and looked him right in the eyes. Damn you, Naruto-kun. Hyuga Hinata screamed, stop making me remember. There is a tool that, depending on how it is used, can turn the tide in almost any situation. Those who lack this tool often have great difficulties in life, but those very difficulties create that tool. Those who possess it, but forget to use it, doom themselves to repeating mistakes made once before. However, for those who both possess and correctly use it, no obstacle is too great. The name of that tool is experience. Yuhi Kurenai was using it to the best of her ability now. Remembering his penchant for the leaf shuriken technique, Kurenai had spent her watch learning its basics. Kurenai watched as her enemy appeared to vanish with the blowing of the wind. He had performed a genjutsu to make him seem invisible. At this very moment, he was creeping up behind her. She knew what he was likely to do, and did nothing to stop his approach. As expected, a tree seemed to sprout of the ground and wrap its branches around her. With the Jubaku Fuyuser illusion in full effect, Kurenai knew her moment had come. She knew of 2 ways to stop this technique. As a genjutsu specialist and a user of this technique, Yuhi Kurenai possessed that familiarity. She focused her chakra in such a way that it would influence the illusion. Hand seals were not needed for this move, which was fortunate, as the illusion kept them pinned down. When Da Iriaga appeared, seeming to come out of the tree, Kurenai made her move. The Genjutsu Kaishu took effect immediately. No sooner had Kurenai done it than Da Iriaga was held fast by his own tree. Kurenai smiled at the shock on his face. Obviously, he had never witnessed such a counter. It's possible he was even one of only a few Nimari who knew the technique at all. Having never experienced such an occurrence, he was caught completely unprepared. Damn you, Naruto-kun. Hyuga Hinata yelled, stop making me remember. Naruto stood there, dumbstruck. Had Hinata just said what he thought she had? As though the shout had served as a trigger, the tree mark on her forehead began to glow a pale green. Naruto watched as the glow began to spread along her head, gradually covering her body. As soon as it stated, the glow faded, revealing several symbols painted on Hinata's skin. Some were kanji, others Naruto didn't recognize. Hinata remained where she was, kneeling on the ground. She didn't move, nor did she seem to notice the changes on her body. It seemed she was too wrapped up in her own pain and memories to care. Hinata, Naruto said, taking some tentative steps toward her. Stop looking like me, she said, barely above a whisper. Not really sure what else to do, Naruto complied. He dropped his illusion, returning to his normal form. He also dispelled all of his Hinata-formed bunshin. Hinata, the girl twitched when Naruto spoke her name. We gotta leave. Leave, Hinata repeated. Yeah, before the geezer over there gets any ideas about stopping us. Naruto said. He won't, Hinata muttered, looking at the old man. The Kij is in the midst of the chant that will bring the goddess here. He can't stop or the ceremony will fail. He wants very desperately for it to succeed. Then let's go, Naruto told her. He walked up to Hinata and grabbed her arm to pull her to her feet. Hinata pulled away from his grip, crawling backwards away from him. Stay back, Shinbwa, she hissed angrily. Her anger was just as suddenly replaced by a nervous stare. Naruto could see it in her eyes. It was clear she wasn't certain about what to do. Kurenai had warned him about this. Should you succeed, Kurenai had explained when Naruto filled her in on his plan, Hinata will likely experience her real memories in a rush. All of them almost at once. This is likely to place her in a state of psychological shock. A conflict between her real self and Kashyuinga. What's that mean? Naruto had asked. Best case scenario, she'll enter a state of catatonia, meaning she won't move, speak, or react to anything. We can deal with that later. If that happens, just grab her and go. More likely, however, she'll be very confused. Torn between oneself and the other. It'll be your burden, in that event, to bring her back to her senses and convince her to become Hyuga Hinata once again. In other words, he had to try and talk her back to Earth. He could do that. Hinata, it's not safe here. Naruto told her, we need to leave right now. He needs me, Hinata said, looking at the old man, the Kij. He said only I can help him bring the goddess to this world. By SU. Naruto told her. When she cringed, he realized he'd screamed that part. Naruto stepped back and shut up. The last thing he needed to do now was panic her. She was too close to that as it was. Naruto, very slowly, walked up to her and kneeled down in front of her. Hinata, he said, looking her in the eyes, we cannot stay here. But if I go, I'll let him down, Hinata said, I'd let my people down. Hinata, Naruto said, growing frustrated, these are not your people. Me, Kurenai-sensei, Kiba, Shino, your clansmen, we're your people. We all came here to get you. Why? How can you even ask that? You're a shinobi of Konohagakure. A comrade. We won't leave you behind. With that, Naruto grabbed Hinata's wrists and pulled the girl to her feet. To Naruto's surprise, she began to struggle violently. Let go, Naruto-kun. She yelled, let go. Unhand me, shinobi. With that, Hinata kneed Naruto in the stomach. As Naruto staggered, she pulled back out of his immediate reach. I am not Hinata. Hinata shouted, I am not that girl. That weakling. I'm not. I. Hinata suddenly sank to her knees and held her head. Naruto heard her as she suddenly began to cry. I don't want to be Hinata, I don't want to be a weakling, she moaned. Why did you make me remember, Naruto-kun? Why are making me remember my weakness? Hinata, Naruto said as he stared at the very confused girl before him. He walked over to her, slowly, carefully so as not to accidentally scare her again. Hinata, listen to me. I came here to rescue you. You, Hyuga Hinata, not Kashunaga or whatever. And I'm gonna do it. Naruto-kun, Hinata said with a sniff. Naruto actually felt a bit of relief when Hinata smiled and blushed slightly. You actually came here to rescue me. Of course I did, Naruto answered. Thank you, Hinata said, taking Naruto's hand into hers, and, sorry. It's okay. Naruto said, "You don't gotta apologize because I got pulled into this, too." "Yes, that as well." Ha! Naruto realized just a moment too late just what Hinata meant. Hinata could only stare in the direction in which she had just sent Naruto flying. Her mind focused on only one question. What did I just do? She had just sent Uzumaki Naruto falling, very possibly, to his D. She wondered for a moment what on earth had possessed her to do that. She understood the answer just as quickly. Hinata looked at the old Kij and understood. She had done it for him. For Da Iriga. For the Nimari. For those who had acknowledged her talent and given her confidence and strength she had never known before. The Kij, having watched all that transpired, was not surprised by the girl's actions. He had felt such an outcome might occur. It was what made this girl such an ideal candidate for the goddess. Even if the purification was broken, he suspected she would still serve the Nimari cause. When one desperately seeks acknowledgement above all else and receives it, she will do anything for those who give it. As he finished the final words of his chanting, he decided it was time to act, before the child wavered once more. Cash Yuingar, the Kij said. The girl did not respond. Hinata, he said, using her name from before. Her head snapped up and she stared at the old man. Kij, it is no time to falter. Are you ready, child, to fulfill your destiny? To become our goddess? Hinata's mouth formed a thin line. For a moment, the Kij honestly wondered if she would indeed be able to follow through. His fears were unfounded, however, as the girl activated the ghostly eyes and walked closer to him. I am, she replied, all the confidence of Cash Yuingar in her voice. Then let the final stage commence. With that, the Kij took a deep breath, calling up his life's flame to perform the technique that would provide the signal to those scattered among the ley lines' focusing points. The man picked up a mound of leaves scattered near him. Some from the heat of Cash Yuingar's battle, some just there because they fell on their own. He held them for a moment, channeling the flame into the leaves. He next took a deep breath and blew as he opened his palm. What had once been leaves flew from the man's palm in the shape of bright flower petals. A simple technique, one he used in festivals and celebrations to heighten the mood. People believed that when they caught the petals the Kij made, they would be blessed with good fortune. As this would be the greatest moment of the Nimari's history, it was truly appropriate. The Kij clapped his hands together. With the guidance of his life's flame the petals scattered. They flew along the winds on a path that would take them all past the channelers hidden deep in the woods. They would channel their power into the lines of the forest. From there the power would flow along the lines until they reached a single point. A nexus in the system. One located on the plaza, where he and Cash Yuingar waited. In the woods, men and women, those with the most powerful and enduring of life's flames, saw the flower petals fly by and understood. It was time. They summoned as much power as they could manage from their inner flames. When its strength reached its peak, they put their hands down on the ground. Their target was the junction point of the ley lines. These points would absorb the power and send it along the complex pathways that would eventually reach the plaza. There, all the Nimari's power would gather, creating a beacon great enough that the goddess would know the exact location of their vessel. The location of she of the ghostly eyes. Kurenai had just been about to land her final blow upon Da Iriga when she heard Naruto's scream above her. Naruto, however, got off relatively unscathed. Kurenai sensei, he cried out. Kurenai sat up and reassured him she was more or less fine. She had him explain the events up above and why he was falling like he had. She listened silently as he quickly related his fight with Hinata and her condition after regaining her memories. No, Kurenai whispered silently to herself, we failed. Not yet, we didn't. Naruto yelled, it's not over yet. I'm going back you. It's over Naruto. Kurenai said as she stood herself up, Hinata is lost to us. But, Naruto, you said. Hinata was confused. She didn't know what to do or even who she was. In that condition, she would have reoriented herself by seeking that which gave her the greatest comfort and direction. In that condition, she chose Cash Yuingar over Hyuga Hinata. Both shinobi were silent for a long time. Only Kurenai's training kept her emotions from pouring out. Kurenai didn't want to believe it. However, she knew it was true. The Hyuga Hinata they'd always known was lost to them. Even if they got her back now, for better or for worse she'd never be the same. Kurenai didn't wish to have to do what she knew was next. But now, there was little choice. As they spoke, the Nimiri were finishing the ceremony that would bring the goddess forth. A ceremony that absolutely could not be successful, no matter what. They had to put an end to it somehow. They had to restart the cataclysm that destroyed Morigakure village so long ago. Even though it would mean their lives. Suddenly, the ground around them began to glow. A faint white hue began to emit from the soil. Kurenai scanned the site and realized that the white light seemed to be almost a spider-web network of pathways and currents. The ley lines. Kurenai realized. Chakra was being channeled into them at such a queni that they were becoming visible to the eye. Looking at the stump, Kurenai saw the lines snake their way up into the tree trunk high into the air. She knew, at the top, was a great cluster of the lines. A focal point in the network. All the chakra would gather at a specific point in that cluster. Though it would be near impossible to gauge exactly where. Near impossible, that is, without the use of the Byakugan. With a person of the Hyuga clan, it was possible to successfully complete the ritual. Which meant, Mori, no. Kurenai turned towards the sound of the voice and saw Da Iriaga, leaning on his right arm and supporting himself against the large tree. Mori, no. He staggered and fell into a sitting position, his back leaning against the roots of the tree. Mori, no Megami. He cried out, a smile on his face. What? Naruto said. The goddess is about to be reborn. Kurenai explained. No. Kurenai looked at the boy, whose demeanor had suddenly changed. No. He cried out. He brought his hands together and began calling up chakra. Kurenai wondered what he was thinking when she suddenly felt the rush of power coming from within him. She understood at once. He was calling on the powers of the Kyubi, the nine-tailed fox sealed within him. Naruto, I won't let her do it. He cried out, I don't care what it takes. He was about to rush up the tree full tilt when Kurenai called out to him. She considered trying to convince him not to go, but she knew it would be pointless. He was decided and Kurenai was in no condition to physically stop him. Naruto, she said, good luck. And, for what it's worth, the fox really wasn't why we brought you. Naruto turned and looked up at the tree. I know, and thanks. With that, Naruto, swathed in the red light of the demon's chakra, ran to take one last shot at keeping Hinata from destroying herself. Da Iriaga watched the faces of the shinobi fall as he pronounced the coming of his goddess. His enemies might have beaten him, but Kashyuingar, with the goddess power, would finish them. His own face fell, however, at the experience that came next. The blonde boy, the one Kashyu had been infatuated with, began displaying the power of a life's flame more intense than any Da Iriaga had felt before. It felt terrible and he wasn't even close to it. He watched as the boy, strengthened by that power, charged his way up to the plaza. Yuhi Kurenai turned and saw him. She smirked at the expression of shock on his face before falling back into a sitting position. He initially thought the blonde boy was returning. But he then discovered something was different about this. It wasn't coming from above him. It was coming from below. The dark power was coming from the ley lines. The pathways that were channeling the goddess to his foster daughter. No, he thought, it cannot be. This power, this demonic flame, it can't be our goddess. As the feeling of dread passed and faded, he looked up, to where he could now feel two of the intense flames, racing up to the top of the tree. He looked to Kurenai, who appeared as worried as he now felt. If that truly was the goddess, then just what was Kashyuingar about to become? Naruto charged up the tree as fast as his fox-heightened legs would take him. There was no time for hesitation, for second thoughts. Even conscious thought was lost to him, save for the one driving Naruto's actions in these moments. I have to save Hinata. Hinata was the first. Before Kakashi-sensei. Before Sakura-chan and Sasuke. Before even Iruka-sensei. Even if she couldn't say so, she was the first to believe in me. I won't let her become a monster. Not like I am. No matter what it takes. Hinata is the one person I cannot fail. And he wouldn't. Even if doing so meant his life. Which might well become the case, as Naruto suddenly felt something behind him. He couldn't see anything chasing him, but was there. A spirit, or some other Ani that possessed no body. Or at least, didn't possess one at the moment. Naruto guessed that this was the forest goddess everyone was so worried about. It felt similar to the fox, making him understand exactly why it made everybody nervous. To make matters worse, the forest itself had suddenly decided to become Naruto's enemy. From atop the plaza, the Kij, sensing Naruto's approach, took countermeasures. Nearly every technique he could muster the strength for he was using. Naruto dodged and weaved, while keeping up as much forward momentum as he could, while branches from nearby trees suddenly stretched and shot at him in an attempt to run him through. The bark of the tree he ran on was constantly pulling at Naruto's feet, trying to grab him and pull him into the tree like a wooden quicksand. Leaves shot from all directions to injure him. Naruto easily managed enough force to extract his feet free of the tree bark trying to snare him. He could expel his chakra out with such force that the tree leaves either stopped or burned to a crisp due to the unstable force. The spearing branches were nothing to worry about either, he could easily dodge, catch, and rip them apart as necessary. His charge would not be abated, though. When Naruto reached the platform that made up the top of the plaza, his eyes locked onto Hinata's, who stood there, Byakugan activated, shocked at the sight before her. The Kij, desperate to stop the boy, used the final technique at his disposal. To the casual observer, it might have seemed as though the trees themselves moved down to create a wall. In actuality, it was an ancient and complex ninjutsu which summoned forth the bark from nearby trees and densely packed around the users to form a nearly impenetrable barrier. Nearly. 4. Without even breaking stride, Naruto clapped his hands together and made the sign necessary to form two Kage Bunshin at his side. He held his hand, palm up, out to them. As they moved, the Bunshin began moving their hands around his own, molding the chakra Naruto was forming there into a coherent ball shape and maintaining it. As Naruto reached the wooden barrier before him, the two Bunshin vanished. Naruto slammed his hand into the trees before him with as much force as he could. The wall down, nothing stood between himself and Hinata. She watched, awestruck, as Naruto charged at her. Naruto remembered briefly that the ritual required Hinata to remain in one place. That meant that where she was standing right now was probably that one place. Which, in turn, meant that the ceremony would fail if Hinata was moved. There was only one thing Naruto could think to do. And he had no qualms about doing it. He tackled Hinata out of her place and took it for himself. Naruto-kun. Hinata exclaimed as she hit the ground. Hinata, run, now, Naruto said. But he didn't care. With a grin on his face. All around the forest valley it was felt. The monumental power of the goddess of the forest, the Mori no Megami, as it found its new host. The shinobi of Konoha were dismayed. They had failed. They were also resigned. This likely meant they were done for. The Nimari were ecstatic. Cheers sounded from all over the forest as those who were still battling the Konoha nin as well as the hiding non-combatants cried out. Emotions became powerful, for all knew that the goddess had been reborn at last. Only she hadn't. Not in the way everyone believed it was to happen, at least. Hyuga Hinata watched as Naruto fell onto his back. She couldn't believe what she had just witnessed. What he had just done. She had been prepared to accept the goddess into her body when Naruto charged, her Byakugan showing him bathed in a monstrous red chakra she had never felt the likes of before, save for the second white chakra right behind him, traveling along the ley line network within the plaza. She had frozen in that instant, unable to fully understand just what was happening. Torn between her frantic desire to move and her desire to stand her ground and see this ceremony to its end. Now, however, her mind was racked with questions. What was Naruto? What was that thing chasing after him? What had she just been about to allow into her body? What had Naruto just taken in her place? Naruto-kun, she exclaimed as he hit the ground. She ran to him and dropped to her knees before him. She scanned his body with the Byakugan and was even more startled. With himself and the goddess in one body, she anticipated seeing two chakras within Naruto. She saw them, one a bright blue, the other a luminous white. However, along with those two there was a third. A dark red power. The chakra that had allowed Naruto to plow through the Kij's final defenses and reach her. What is happening? Said a tired voice. Hinata turned to the Kij and answered him in the Nimari tongue. Nen Naruto-kun, he took the goddess into himself. What? The old man cried out. Hinata could not remember seeing him so tired and weak before. His age was catching up to him. The use of so many powerful techniques, not the least of which was the summoning of the goddess in the first place, had taken their toll. Hinata didn't believe he could be standing. What is happening within the boy? He asked. I don't understand why, but he possesses 3 life's flames. 3. Yes, Hinata said. She watched for a moment longer before letting out a gasp. The white flame, it's consuming the boys. The Kij asked. Yes, Hinata exclaimed. How did you know? Hinata suddenly looked at the old man in a whole new light. He knew that would happen. He was going to let me. You really were going to me, she said, remembering Naruto's words earlier. I was, the Kij said with a cough, not bothering to deny it. How could you? I thought. You thought right, the Kij answered, his breathing heavy with exhaustion. My sole dream, it was to bring forth our goddess. To see with my own eyes, the one who would restore our clan to glory. But you were going to let me. You deserved the honor. You were ideal for the task in so many ways beyond your simple possession of the blessed lion's eyes. You were strong, intelligent, and, most importantly, loyal. Loyal. I knew, the Kij said before a cough interrupted him. When I purified you, I saw into your heart. I saw a girl who would do anything for those who acknowledged her. Whose loyalty would know no bounds, once it was sworn. That was why, even after your purification was defeated, you still wished to serve us. But, if I had known, would it have mattered? Of course it would have. Hinata yelled, struck at the question. How could he be serious? If she'd known that she would have D from the start, she would never. Hinata let out another gasp. What is it, child? The Kij asked. The 3rd flame, the red one. What is it doing? Attacking. She stood in a tunnel, almost like a Soa's, if she was aware of such a thing. They hadn't existed in her past before. Regardless, she was there. She knew she was not in the proper vessel. The one her followers had chosen for her. It was a disappointment, but it was not the end. There were ways to correct the problem. For now, though, she needed to feast. The process of entering a physical bee was taxing for her. She needed to consume something to regain her strength. Or rather, consume someone. The true owner of this body. His soul would make a fine meal. She could feel his immense power. She felt something else as well, something even greater in power. But at the moment it was sealed away. It was not a threat. She could deal with the other energy source after she was finished with the child. The goddess of the forest began exploring the tunnel, seeking her sustenance. Naruto traveled through the odd tunnels as well. He remembered this place. He had visited it once before, in the moments before he had summoned the frog boss, Gamabunta, for the first time. He didn't totally understand how it worked, but this place was inside him. His mind or something. He knew that somewhere around here was that goddess that got into him. As well as the Kyuubi. The damned fox was locked away deep in this place as well. He had a feeling as to how to deal with this new development. Though it involved finding both the fox and the other monster. He could almost feel the way to reach the fox. That left the other one. He traversed the tunnels for what felt like an eternity before he turned a corner and saw it. The thing that had nearly killed Hinata. The thing now positioned to take his life instead. He had been told the creature was D. Naruto had little trouble believing it. She was human in appearance for the most part. However, her skin and hair were completely white, her arms and fingers both much longer and more slender than a normal woman's. Her pointed ears stood straight up on the top of her head. She was clothed in a simple black gown. He had little time to think about it before she caught sight of him. There you are, boy, she said. He raced through the tunnels. Though he didn't know his way at all, he somehow felt he was going in the right direction. That was, until he hit the dead end. The demon woman stopped as well and smirked. She had him cornered, and she knew it. Naruto, however, was never the type to cower in fear when trapped like he was. He was a scrapper, a fighter. His instincts screamed at him to fight back, so he did. Naruto charged the goddess with all that he had. But she sidestepped him easily. She grabbed Naruto's arms and held them behind his back. Silly boy, she growled, fighting here isn't the same as fighting the physical world. I'm far more adept at this environment than you. Now, be still while I devour you. Let go, Naruto said as he squirmed in the creature's grasp. You'll make a fine meal, she said. This body will be mine as soon as you are gone. And the immense chakra within you will strengthen me like little else can. You're wrong, Naruto said. Getting rid of me won't let you take my body. You forgot something very important. Oh, what's that? My tenant. With that, Naruto forced his head backwards, the back of it colliding with her chin. She stepped back slightly and bumped into the wall behind her. Only then did she realize it was not a wall, but a doorway. Only then did she sense what was hidden behind that gate. Only then did the Mori no Megami realize that she was doomed. Behind her was a barred gate, locked by what appeared nothing more than a large paper with a seal written upon it. Behind it was a power far greater than the goddess's own. The power of a Yuma was hidden there. One of the 9-tailed beasts. The worst of them all. Before she could move away, a large paw squeezed itself past the bars and grabbed hold of her. Hey, chuckled a cruel voice behind the gate. You know, boy, I'd much rather eat you. But this will suffice for now. The goddess of the forest never had a chance. The paw pulled her into the tunnel that caged its owner. Thanks to the pure darkness within, she never saw the beast that devoured her. Hinata kneeled beside Naruto, unable to fully fathom what she had just witnessed. In the chakra coil network of Naruto's body existed not one, not two, but 3 chakras. One, which Hinata's Byakugan showed her as a bright white, was almost certainly the goddess. The second, a deep blue, Hinata believed was Naruto's. What owned the 3rd chakra, a chilling blood red, Hinata had no idea. All she knew is it had somehow turned the whole situation around. The white chakra traveled the veins of Naruto's coils, seeking out the bright blue flame in the center. Just as it had the blue fire surrounded, though, the red chakra, which seemed to have its own separate network within Naruto, began to move. It managed to seep into Naruto's blue coils and attack the goddess's chakra. Hinata could only watch, numb with shock, as the red chakra did to the white, what it had planned to do with Naruto's blue. The red chakra consumed it utterly. What did the red flame do? The Kij asked, reading the surprise on Hinata's face. I'm sorry, Hinata said in the Nimari language, your goddess is gone. What? Impossible. You lie. I don't. The red flame, it devoured the white, the goddess. The Kij fell to his knees. He didn't want to believe it. But he knew Cash Hyuga was not lying. All our work, he breathed as tears began to flow from his eyes, all the S made just for this day. All of it for nothing. The shock of it all was too much for the Kij. His breathing became erratic. Kij, Hinata cried. She was about to move to his side, but he held up a hand to stay her. Even with what you perceive as our betrayal, you are still concerned. Kij, I told you, all I wished was to live long enough to see the goddess come to this world. The old man let out several hacking coughs. The strain of summoning her here, keeping the shinobi back, it's too much for this old body, it is just as well, I have nothing left now. The goddess, my goddess, is no more. The Kij, the man who would have been, in other circumstances, the wood shadow closed his eyes and exhaled one last breath before his body completely ceased to move. Hinata didn't want to shed any tears. Not for the man who had fully intended to kill her for his goal. But she couldn't help herself. He had been as a grandfather to her as Cash Hyuga. As encouraging and supportive as Da Iriga. It was that moment she understood something very important about herself. Would it have mattered? He had asked, when Hinata had been about to tell him she never would have cooperated had she known. No, Hinata admitted aloud, a tear falling down her cheek, it wouldn't have. Was she so pathetic, so desperate for simple acknowledgement that she would knowingly and willfully throw her life away? Turn against those she cared for the most? She was. The realization that she would do that, as well as the sight of Naruto sprawled on the tree before her, because he accepted the fate meant for her, made her realize just how low she had sunk. Her thoughts were interrupted, though, when Naruto's innermost chakra coils began glowing a bright, red. An amazing rush of wind knocked Naruto off his feet. The Kyuubi was laughing. I take it back. It laughed, this meal more than suffices. Naruto didn't realize it, but the Kyuubi had been given an incredible rush by its meal of forest goddess. A rush that created a brief raise in its already formidable power. A boost that was enough to allow it to potentially break free of its seal. To do to Naruto what the Mori no Megami had attempted. What the Kyuubi had done to her. Hinata could only watch as Naruto's body suddenly became a series of lines of flowing red. His body began twisting and turning, contorting as the chakra forced its way into Naruto's chakra network from its own. Hinata also saw changes on Naruto's face, not the least of which were the little whisker lines on his face seemed to become thicker. She had no idea what was happening. She could only assume that the red chakra was now attempting to take Naruto's body like the goddess had. Hinata got to her feet and stepped away, more than a little frightened of the sight before her. The red chakra was taking over at a rapid pace. If something wasn't done soon, Naruto's blue chakra would be overwhelmed. Hinata wasn't sure what to do. No, that wasn't true. Hinata knew exactly what to do. The only question was, could she do it? It doesn't matter. Hinata decided, if I do nothing, Naruto-kun will. That was what decided her. Naruto had been her inspiration, her idol for so long. She would not just stand idly by and let him die. Not if there was anything she could do. And there was. Just as with the Kaiten, Hinata had been training in another technique exclusive to members of the Hyuga main family. One of the clan's most powerful techniques. To date, she had only had marginal success with stationary practice dummies. Now she had to perform it perfectly, with Naruto twisting about randomly. She had no idea if she'd actually succeed. But she had to try. No, not try. Do. With that, exhaustion won out. Hyuga Hinata's eyes closed and sleep took her. For the first time in weeks, Hyuga Hinata slept a dreamless sleep. When her body and mind were fully rested, she slowly awoke. Her eyes opened and her vision slowly accustomed itself to her surroundings. She saw the ceiling of what appeared to be a primitive hut. With a sudden jolt of awareness, she shot straight up. She recognized her surroundings immediately. She was in a Nimari hut. That much she was certain of. However, she was not wearing Nimari clothing. She was wrapped in a kimono a bit too big for her. It looked very much in the style of those worn by the Hyuga. Hinata realized it must belong to one of the Hyuga who came to the forest. Hinata, said a voice. With a start, Hinata looked to the source. Kei Kurenai sensei. Yuhi Kurenai sat in the room, leaning back on a wall. Her arm was in a split, but she seemed otherwise uninjured. Hinata thought otherwise, though, when the older woman winced slightly as she moved herself closer to her student. Elsewhere in the room sat Da Iriga. His arm was also bandaged, as was his stomach. He also seemed to have difficulty moving. Hinata had difficulty looking him in the eye. How are you feeling, Hinata? She asked. I'm fine, sensei. Hinata answered. Sensei, where are we? It looks like we're still in the Nimari village. We are. Kurenai said. Where is everyone? Scattered around the village. We're being kept apart so we are unable to collaborate. Are we prisoners? Kind of. Kurenai answered. Da Iriga eyed Kurenai carefully but said nothing as she went on to explain the situation. They were being detained, but they weren't exactly prisoners. Kurenai and Da Iriga had remained close to Hinata, both fearing the other's potential influence when Hinata finally awoke. The others were kept at different parts of the village. This, Kurenai suspected, was to make sure escape would be more difficult, if not impossible. So for the time being they were cooperating. Kurenai further explained that, after their own fight, they had made their way up to the plaza. By the time they had arrived, everything had already settled down. Hinata had been found lying on top of Naruto. Next to them the body of a man Hinata knew to be the Kish. Unsure of what to make of these events, the two enemies had managed to communicate each other enough to form an uneasy truce. The fact that neither was in fighting condition helped push that idea along. When others began to show, Da Iriga had communicated the ceasefire to the Nimari while Kurenai filled in her students and the Hyuga. Hours later, Naruto was the first to awaken. He explained the majority of what happened to Kurenai and company. Unfortunately, Naruto didn't speak the Nimari's language, so they had no way of explaining to them what happened. I was tempted then to just take you and run. Kurenai said confidentially, however, this is our best chance to come to a mutual, and peaceful, understanding. Hinata understood that well enough. Konoha already had the Otonin, the ninja of sound, to worry about. A second enemy was not needed if it could be avoided. She also understood the only way a peaceful resolution right now was possible. Hinata, Kurenai began before Hinata see her off. I can still speak the Nimari language. She said, part of the purification was the implanting of the language into my mind. Otherwise I never would have had the mastery of it I had as Kashyyying Ga. You spoke it more fluently than your own tongue. Kurenai observed, but, I can't recall every single thing, now that the purification is broken. However, what I do remember will suffice. Kurenai nodded approval. She also noticed a slight change in Hinata's demeanor. But now wasn't the time. She moved back and allowed Hinata to see Da Iriaga. The man had apparently taken charge in the wake of their old leaders D. She had no idea what the two said to one another. Nonetheless, Kurenai listened intently as they spoke. Kurenai had given no direction one way or the other, so she suspected Hinata was leaving nothing out. Telling Da Iriaga the full story, start to finish, to the best of her ability. Then our goddess is forever gone. Yes, Hinata answered reluctantly. Da Iriaga let out a heavy sigh. This will be difficult to tell the others. However, I think this might be for the best. Hinata asked in surprise. When the goddess made her way up to the plaza, I felt it, a terrible power. Left me chilled to the bone. The only other thing that did that, was the second flame within the shinobi boy you fancied. Hinata blushed a bit at that statement. Kurenai raised an eyebrow while Da Iriaga simply smiled at the reaction before growing serious again. If our goddess was such as what was inside that boy, I fear what the Nimiri would have done in her name. However, there is one thing I must ask, Kashyyying Ga. Hinata, she corrected. You will always be Kashyyying Ga to me. Da Iriaga said affectionately, just what was that other flame? I don't know. Hinata answered honestly. Kurenai, when asked, simply said that it was a matter of strict secrecy. Every person who did not already know the truth was forbidden to know. That included Hinata. Da Iriaga gave no reaction to this information. He simply took his leave of the two young women. Hinata explained he had to break the news to the Nimiri. So what now? Hinata asked. That depends. Kurenai said, if the Nimiri take all this as badly as I fear, then we'll have to fight our way out. As for the others, we can only hope they handle their own escapes. However, with that man in charge I think we can count on something less violent. Which means we'll need you to serve as a translator long enough to get a temporary arrangement made. Something to last until Hokage-sama can officially send someone to negotiate. Kurenai's prediction had been accurate. Da Iriaga was able to keep the Nimiri from reacting violently, despite how angry they were over the events. Many were unhappy about the turn, prepared to execute the shinobi, including their Kashyyying Ga, on the spot. Fortunately, they heeded Da Iria's warnings about possibly starting a war with the tribe whose warriors had stopped the goddess. All agreed that, for now, peace was preferable. Hyuga Raizen, with Hinata as translator, worked out the majority of the details. Though Da Iriaga would have preferred speaking with Kurenai, leader of the group and one whom he considered an equal, Kurenai had deferred to the Hyuga because he had served in Konoha's diplomatic corps and was better suited to such negotiations. In a matter of days, a temporary accord had been worked out. All 9 of the Konoha nin would return to their village. Upon returning, Hinata would be tasked with teaching the Nimiri language to diplomats who would then come to the Nimiri village for a more permanent arrangement. In the meantime, Da Iriaga would have the Nimiri refrain from attacking any villages in the area for any reason, though mutually beneficial trade would be perfectly fine. What the official diplomats would do was up in the air. The main goals would be to make sure the Nimiri would not be enemies of Konoha or the Fire Country as a whole. If possible, they might even make them allies. Hinata feared that a condition placed on the Nimiri would be the return of those who were in the past purified like she herself. With study, it was likely scholars in Konoha could figure out how to safely break the hold of purification. However, Hinata could remember clearly the utter confusion she had experienced when Naruto had broken her hold. She had only been Nimiri for about a week. She feared the mental and emotional damage possible in someone who had been of the tribe for nearly a decade and a half. Raizen had assured her that she would be able to make such recommendations later. She would have a major role to play in making peace with the people of the forest. Hinata was relieved she'd have a say in things, but also a little frightened of the responsibility that would inevitably be placed on her. The troop of ninja who left the Nimiri village kept silent as they walked. Partly it was caution. Not everybody was convinced that the Nimiri were friendly now. They feared possible traps or ambushes. Most notably, Shino, Kiba, and the Hyuga siblings, Tomoko and Yuishi, kept very careful watch. Kurenai and Raizen, having dealt with Da Iriga personally, felt relatively more assured. As did Hinata, despite all that had happened, didn't believe the man who had seen her as a daughter was a duplicitous man. Naruto was as carefree as ever. Naruto, Hinata thought to herself. The two had not spoken even once since their battle on the plaza. Part of it was simply Hinata being busy with negotiations. But even so, she had managed to make time for everyone. Kiba, Akamaru, Shino, her kin, to assure her she was all right. Everyone had visited her at least once. Except Naruto. The possible reasons why he would avoid her were, to her, numerous. She had nearly gotten him K several times. Her choosing the Nimari in that moment on the plaza, after all the work he'd done, he probably saw that as a betrayal. She hated the idea that the boy she admired most wanted nothing to do with her. It was one thing when he was ignorant of her presence, but the possibility that he would deliberately stay away from her tore her up inside. However, those same events, those same betrayals, made Hinata feel just a bit bolder. She didn't want to let those feelings dominate her, make her cower in fear. She wanted to at least talk to him once more. If he said he wanted nothing to do with her, then so be it. After taking a deep breath to ready herself, Hinata walked ahead to near the front of the line of shinobi, where Naruto was proclaiming himself leader of the expedition home. "En Naruto-kun," she muttered out. Naruto turned to see who was speaking to him. Oh, Hinata. No cheerful greeting, not a good sign. "Naruto-kun, I just wanted to say. I'm sorry," Naruto said, "see her off." "You're sorry? For what?" "I haven't been to see you at all," Naruto said, "I'm sorry. I just couldn't face you." "Oh," Hinata replied, I understand. I suppose I can't blame you. Considering what I did. What you did, that's got nothing to do with it." Naruto said quickly, "I couldn't face you, because. That's when Hinata noticed. Naruto's left hand was clutching his stomach. Hinata understood at once. "Your other chakra," she finished for him. "Yeah, no doubt you know all about it by now," he said, his voice expressing something Hinata couldn't identify. Doubt, sadness, shame. "Actually, Kurenai-sensei wouldn't tell me anything." Da Iriga even asked what it was, but she refused to answer. "Then you don't know?" Naruto asked. "No. And I don't care to, either." "Oh," Naruto said, his head hanging down. "It's not important, anyway," she said. Naruto's head shot up. "What did you? That other chakra, I don't know what it is. All I know is that it's part of you, and probably has been for a long time." "All my life," Naruto replied sadly. "That chakra is a part of you. And that part of you helped save me from making a horrible mistake. That is all I care about." Hinata. With that, Hinata turned herself away. She could feel herself blushing and didn't want Naruto to see. "Which reminds me," Hinata stuttered, "I haven't thanked you properly for saving me." "Thank you." "Oh, Naruto said, red tinting his own cheeks now. "Yeah, and, thank you, too, Hinata." But what did I? Your 64H thing. Naruto explained, "You used it to save my life, right?" "Yes, but I shouldn't be thanked for that." Hinata stammered, "It was because of me your life was in danger in the first place." "Not completely you," Naruto said. "No, it was me. All me. You wouldn't have had to do what you did if I hadn't. Naruto understood exactly what she was referring to. "Hinata, it's okay. I'm not mad about that at all." "What?" Hinata asked in shock, "How can you not be? I nearly got you K. I nearly K you myself. Several times. A giant tree. I know. Then how can you not be even the least bit upset?" "How can I be?" Naruto asked. "Hinata, if it had been me in that position instead of you, well. Naruto-kun. I would have done exactly the same thing as you." Hinata was shocked silent. "I know how hard it is. Not being acknowledged, but wanting it so badly that you'll do anything for it. When you finally do get it, you'll do anything you can for whoever gives it to you. No matter what you have to do or who else gets hurt. How can I be angry at you when I'm no different?" "It wouldn't have mattered," Hinata whispered. Naruto asked. There's one thing I haven't told anybody else, Naruto-kun, she said, keeping her voice low, something that happened on the plaza, after the goddess took you. The Kij, I felt outraged when I learned that. I tried to tell him that I never would have done it had I known, but before I could finish, he asked me if it really would have mattered. I wished so desperately I could say it would, but I know myself better than that. Hinata, I really would have gone through with the ceremony. Even if I had known from the start, as Kashyuinga, that doing so meant my death. Even if I knew the truth, at that moment on the plaza, I still would have thrown you off of it. All because I simply didn't want to be myself anymore. I tried to change, Naruto-kun. I have never had a high opinion of myself. I wanted to change that fact. I wanted to feel stronger. After I faced Neji-Nisan in the Chunin exam, I thought I had done that. I felt different about myself. But nobody else seemed to see the difference. I tried telling myself that it didn't matter what they thought. That I knew I was different and that was all that counted. But as more time went by, I began to doubt. I asked myself if I really changed at all. Was I still the same person I didn't wish to be? Eventually, Kurenai-sensei and my teammates noticed and tried to be there for me. But, by then, I see now that my confidence was so destroyed that I didn't hear words or see gestures meant to encourage me. I heard only attempts to coddle and comfort a weak child. But Hinata, Naruto said, none of that's true. You're not weak, yo. I understand that now, she interrupted, my time as Kashyuinga showed me a lot. I understand myself a lot better than I ever have. I have seen myself at both my best and my worst. I realized that I am strong. That I can be brave and confident. I also came to understand just how powerful my desire for acceptance was. In the end, it was because of that everything happened as it did. I could have fought their control, the purification. I even tried, at the beginning. But then, Da Iriaga and the Kij, they showed me new ways of fighting. They promised me strength I could not imagine. Whenever I fell, they held out their hands to help me up. On the plaza, when that control broke, I couldn't stand the thought of losing that. My weakness, my overwhelming desires, they got the better of me. But that will never happen again. I know now that, even if I didn't change before, I have now. Because of my experience as one of the forest, I've seen both my true strength and my greatest weakness. Never again will I let that weakness overpower me. Now more than ever, I feel that even if nobody ever acknowledges me, I can go on anyway. Well, that won't be a problem. Naruto said, you got someone right here for that. Hinata couldn't believe what she'd just heard. She thought for a split second that he wasn't being sincere. Just saying that for her sake. But she reminded herself of the promise she'd just made, and remembered Naruto's was not the type to be insincere. Thank you, Naruto-kun. Hinata replied. Naruto answered with a big grin. Hinata herself couldn't help but smile back, a blush covering her cheeks for a moment as she did. The two walked side by side in silence. Several minutes went by before Kiba's voice broke it. What? That's it. Both Hinata and Naruto were a little surprised at Kiba's sudden outburst. Geez, you two, you had a real thing going there. He teased, why are you stopping now? Are you gonna chicken out, Naruto? What did you say, TD? Naruto yelled angrily. A sudden voice interrupted the argument before it could progress into something more violent. It left Kiba dumbstruck for a moment before he began laughing himself silly. Naruto did as well, when he got what he had just heard. Even Shino and Kurenai had difficulty keeping a straight face. Though the Hyuga didn't seem to get the joke until it was explained. With 4 little words, Hinata made sure the rest of the journey back home passed in high spirits. Shut up, Kiba-kun, she had said, with a wry smile. The end. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.